I know are busy, other industry people and stuff, and just people, busy with their lives. And they're watching, they are paying attention, even though everybody's not always, completely engaged on all the stuff I'm posting and sharing and that. So it's good to know they're out there listening and watching and everything. So that's good. That's good for both of us. I like that. You said you have big Thursday nights and everything, and that's awesome. And I'm glad that we've got that big UK following, that you do as well, and that they're listening tonight. So, everyone in the UK, tell someone to book me over there. Get my ass over there.
Well, don't forget,
I'm glad to get back to a show. Yeah,
there is, I'll look up their names and I'll send them over to you. But I have a couple big directors from Hollywood that listen to the show, and a couple producers. One of them is noted for doing horror movies, high budget ones. Send
them my IMDb, send them my website.
Yeah.
Fitzgerald.com.
Yeah. A couple of them have actually been on, but one of them actually has called me up several times on the phone talking to me, and, it's just like, wow, these people, I didn't even realize it. And then when I had John get a hold of me, and then he tells me that his good friend Michael listens to my show. Yeah, I mean, It just kind of shocked me. I just thought it was just everybody, locally listening. But then to find out you have some, named people listening to the show, it kind of shocked me.
Well, I'm sure you have even more that you don't know out there that are listening, that are just fascinated by the subject matter and stuff as the show grows. There's a lot of people out in the audience, and that's the interesting thing, to know that there are people out there that even though they aren't engaging with you yet, they're out there and they're listening and everything. So, yeah, you need to invite them onto the show. Anybody out there that wants to talk about horror, or if they have, like I say, if they have their own kind of paranormal or supernatural experience or something with that, or they're doing a project about that, you should come on and join Gary on the show, because it's a good time. And like you say, you're a pro, damn it, so you know what you're doing.
Well, I'll tell you, the night I get Michael on, I'm going to ask him a lot of, especially the movie when he made it with Tesla, as his assistant and all that stuff. I got to ask him all these questions, I mean, with his background for all those years and still making movies, So
many fascinating films. Yeah, you have to ask him about The Prestige.
I don't even remember that one at all.
It's the one about the two. Again, it gets into my world. It's the two rival illusionist magicians, and one of them winds up going to Tesla. And he is Michael Caine plays the consultant to one of the illusionists, and David Bowie's in it as well. He plays Tesla in the film.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend The Prestige.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's made everything from spy movies to war movies, from World War II type series. And, I mean, even one of the Jaws, I mean, the guy is, famous for,
Yeah.
And then I got a young person one day, he said, well, who is he? And I said, haven't you ever seen him in any movies? No. That's the trouble with young people. I don't know.
They know the young sexy actors, but they don't know the actors that have been around for a while. Even though they're in movies, they guaranteed that they've seen Michael Caine in some of these films, because he's even in the Dark Knight series, the Batman movies. He plays Alfred in those movies. So people have seen him, but they don't know him by name. Though some of the younger people, unless they're into acting, then they know who the other, the players are, all the actors. But I think a lot of the younger crowd that's just following the it actor, or their favorite younger actors and stuff, aren't going to know everybody else in those movies. But guaranteed, they've seen Michael Caine and seen his awesome work on that screen,
Well, the thing is, a lot of the young actors are actors today, and 2 weeks, or it seems like 2 weeks later, they're working for a pizza shop. I mean, a lot of
it's a rough gig.
It's not not like the actors of yesterday. Basically, they've been around for 40, 50 years making movies and making high budget movies. And and then you get these other, I hate to say it, other actors. That maybe are in 3 or 4 movies their whole life, and pretty much that's it.
Well, it's a whole different ballgame out there. I mean, you used to see actors in there, again and again and again because of the studio system that Hollywood had, where you would go and be an actor, and then the studio would go and they do all your press. They would pay you a salary, and then they would tell you what movies you're going to do, and they would cast you in all these movies. And if you were if you then caught on, you got even more movies. But once the studio system was done and gone by the 70s, everything started to change, and that's when you got new filmmakers in, like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Francis Ford Coppola and others, all came in that kind of wild west of the 70s, and that's a pretty cool era for some great, gritty, groundbreaking new films. People were willing to take a risk again, and the studio system was gone, and it was before everything started to get gobbled up by giant corporations, starting in the 80s, which changed the face of it again. And now the whole the cinema world has changed even more now by all of the changes in the new delivery system of the internet. So it still continues to change as well, and that has made it kind of a moving target for somebody who wants to be an actor now and get in. Because you don't necessarily have to be and live in Hollywood or New York to be, a mover and shaker actor. I mean, at least for a while, maybe you need to do to get established. But beyond that, there are so many people that then go and get in and then move out of LA and out of Hollywood, and live where they want, because now auditions are via Skype, or you do a self-tape audition and then you record it and send it in, and that could be here. I mean, I've done auditions for Hollywood films from right here in my home, and I shot them here and then sent them off. So it's a whole new ballgame now because of the technology and the way you can work, and it makes it there's more opportunities, but it also makes it more challenging because you have to know where to focus and what you're doing, and and get training and get yourself cast and seen. So then you have work that hopefully other people are seeing, or you can then cut into your reel and then show to new prospective casting agents and directors and things like that. So it's just it's always been kind of a tough gig, but I mean that's why you saw those actors again and again and again in all those big movies in the past, because they were in the studio system, and that has its ups and downs too, because there wasn't anybody making $20 million a film for being their lead actor or actress either. So it is a whole different world out there for the actor now.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting, yeah.
Well,
that's good and bad. Everything's got its upside and its downside.
When I was a young kid, my dad served with, when he was getting discharged the last couple of months, he was in the military. He served World War II, and then he did Korea. He became really good friends with a guy named James Gardner, which actually was James.
Yeah.
James, and his last name started with a B, and I don't want to give his last name out, but
understood. Yeah,
yeah. But my dad knew him, and when I was a kid, this guy would come up to my house from California. My dad would say, "Oh, my friend from California is coming up." I didn't know who he was. And this went on till I got older, and then I started watching a TV show called Maverick. Mm-hmm. And then I realized who my dad's friend was, and it's really cool because when I got older, knowing him, he was really a cool guy. I used to call him occasionally when he was out, doing his TV show Rockford Files.
Yeah.
And I talking to him one time when he was up visiting my dad, I said, do you know Ronald Reagan? This is when Ronald Reagan, was our president, and he goes, 80s. Oh yeah, he goes, he's a good friend of mine, and all of a sudden, back then, Ronald Reagan once a month used to have a radio show for an hour long, for young people could ask, the president questions. I got a phone call, and I the lady identified herself from the White House, and I'm going, oh, this is a good put on. Well, it was, it was Ronald Reagan. So I talked, here I was, I can't even remember how old I was, but I think I was like 15 or 16, and here I am talking to the president, and he's asking me questions, and we're talking. And, it was on national radio, which really got me. Like I said, I was getting the bug for radio, besides amateur radio. I was getting the bug in my mind. I want to be a DJ, And in fact, he even told me on national radio, he, before he got into movies, he was a DJ and all that stuff too. And we were talking, and then, about maybe a week later, I get a phone call from the White House, and here's Ronald Reagan calling me up, and we're just talking to me like he knew me, and that went on
That's cool.
a couple times, and and that's all thanks to my dad's friend, but it just it made me realize that even important people are people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's very cool. You should have got him to agree to an interview and on a show right then and there. Yeah.
Well, he did one thing. We were talking about Star Wars, like that he wanted, get all these, weapons up in space, to protect us, in case we were attacked. And we're, he was just talking about it, and he kept using the word, them. And I said, "You mean Russia?" He goes, "No, them." I go, "What other country is that?" He goes, "No, them out there."
Really?
Yeah. And
that's fascinating. Did he elaborate any more on that?
Yeah, basically alien type of thing out there. That's
right.
Yeah, that was his concern. It was to protect Earth against a shield. To protect Earth against them. And and then I mentioned that maybe a week or two later, I called up James Gardner, and we were talking, and I mentioned what he said, and he goes, "Well, him and Nancy are really into the occult." I didn't even know that.
They're famously, Nancy consulted an astrologer before they made certain moves on things, policy and personal things as well.
Oh yeah, even political. When he was the president.
And definitely political policy, and then their personal stuff. Yeah, so it's really fascinating. But that's always been pretty well known that Nancy liked to consult an astrologer. That's been talked about a lot.
Yeah.
So that's interesting how much they were into that. I didn't know that was part of his idea of the Star Wars defense at the time.
Oh yeah,
that was not necessarily terrestrial, but extraterrestrial defense. That's really interesting. But I could see that too. It's like there's so many of the the astronauts and even the shuttle astronauts and everything have all talked about things they've seen out there.
Well, even Buzz, Aldrin, when he was on the moon, he didn't even admit to it to his later years. He started saying that when he stepped out of the the shuttle, or what, not shuttle, but out of the lander. He said that he saw UFOs, huge, bigger than anything he's ever seen before. Just on the other side of the whatever that was, and they were, he said that they were told never go back to the moon. But while he was saying all this stuff, I guess that he was broadcasting it back to NASA or the Cape or whatever it was, and they kept telling him to go to a medical channel, because they knew that that signal could be intercepted by amateur radio operators and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
so I don't know. There's so many things out there that honestly, Ron, it's really you could write a book on all that just right there of all the scary things. That's
pretty fascinating. Did he ever say anything more about why they were trying to tell him not to come back to the moon at all? Was it
no?
Because
all he said is that we were instructed never to go back to the moon, and then all of a sudden we never went back to the moon.
Yes. Yeah. And did any of the other missions, have an experience, like that later?
Well, I know some of the other astronauts, that, when they was circling the moon and stuff, they said that they saw UFOs. So, I mean, again, you have to understand, we kind of debunked it, the government, there's no such thing as UFOs, but, Why would we be sending people to the moon and want to send people to Mars and look for previous life if we didn't realize that there's something out there?